So, how did Daughter all come about, and what was the writing process like for this? Because there's a lot to unpack in this film.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, it started with conversations that I had with the lead actress and producing partner Vivian about just what we wanted creatively for our own careers. She pursuing this as from an actor's perspective gets boxed into roles in a certain way, and similarly, myself approaching this as a director of color in this industry, I'll get boxed into a certain expectation of what it is I should make or would even be allowed to make. And neither of us like that very much. We don't necessarily like an industry who doesn't yet know who we are, telling us what we are or are not capable of. And we thought, you know what? Why don't we show them? Why don't we go out and do this on our own and create our own space where we could be the types of artists that we want to be and be expressive in ways that we don't get to be in the industry otherwise. And it started from there. Elise and Ian were also a part of the process early on, as I had met them socially as well. And so I knew from day one that I was writing the film for these three actors to play this family unit. And so I got to, write toward what I wanted to see them do, already being familiar with their work. And even creatively, that existed before I knew what story I would even tell for Daughter. The story developed, I think, over a couple of months, just wanting to find something that I thought could be interesting and give me an opportunity to do something unique visually, while at the same time knowing it couldn't cost a lot of money. And that became the other central premise of the film, is these people have to stay in one location just because we can't afford multiple locations. So what is a cool way to try to do that?
Right. And you got Casper Van Dien to be the father in this. So that had to be pretty cool to get him locked in for this too.
Absolutely. All right, so that role was written, before we knew who we'd go after or who we'd be able to get at all. And so it was a nice surprise when he said yes. Because one thing that I did want for that role was somebody who would be playing against type. You want the audience to have a certain expectation about what that character could be and then subvert it. And for somebody like him, that's not what the audience would think they would see Casper Van Dien do in the film. So it was really cool.
And when you were filming Daughter, was there any difficult sequences you had to film that was you're talking about on a small budget, or did it all just kind of fluctuate as you go? How was the filming process like for Daughter as well?
Yeah, that presented its own challenges just for budget and other practical reasons. And one of those was the size of the location. So the house was a lot smaller than what it looks in film. We shot a lot of stuff wide, so it kind of creates this scope for it. But we were in some pretty tight spaces. So I had in my head a certain visual design of the film that I immediately realized on day one I was not going to be able to achieve, because I was not going to be able to physically get the camera far enough away from the actors as I would have wanted to in order to stage them a certain way. So from day one, every single day, what I thought the scene was going to look like was going to need to change, and the visual language was going to need to evolve to fit the space, and then still try to find a way to deliver what I ultimately wanted to deliver and tell the story through the camera and through movement the way I had originally intended, and finding what that blend could be. And about halfway through the shoot of what was only going to be a 12-day shoot, we had to evacuate the set because a brush fire broke out nearby our filming location.
Yeah.
And so we had to drop everything in the middle of a day and leave. We lost a day and a half in that week and went into the weekend. We didn't know if the fire was going to come and destroy the set, if we'd all be lost or any of that. But fortunately, that didn't happen, and we were able to return. But in a budget like this, that means returning with a day and a half less of filming. There's no studio we can go to get more money. It's that's it. And so at that point, it became, how do we finish the film without being able to actually shoot the entire film? And that created its own version of creative squeezes on other types of sequences. And I think we did all right in the end, but there are still some things that I would look at now and I see I don't like how that looks. That was something that was supposed to be shot over the course of a day and a half, and we had to shoot in half a day, and now, that sort of thing. But, you make it work. That's all you can do, really.
Right. And with this movie coming out, what would you like people to take away from it?
Let's see. What was fascinating when I was putting this together was when I first sent the script out to all of the cast, everybody had a very different interpretation of what they thought the film meant, based on what role they were reading, or maybe even where their state of mind was going into the read. And I thought that was really cool. It was in part a little by design. I wanted this to feel like each character could live in their own reality, and what's true for them might not necessarily be true for the other. So the idea that there could be multiple interpretations was there from the beginning. I didn't know if it would work. So that was pretty cool to get that response. And so when it comes to the audience now, I'm looking for a similar thing. I want to know what the audience thinks this film actually means, or if they choose to, take it on its own terms and dive in and investigate. I'm curious to know what they'll find, and I hope the people who do decide to take the film in that way can enjoy doing so.
Well, what's next for you, Corey, after this, if you can discuss that with us a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I'm working on some fun TV projects now. I write for Power Book 2 Ghost, which is a completely different kind of style and tone than Daughter. I wrote for a show called The Night Agent that'll be out on Netflix next month. And for myself, personal work, I'm putting together my next feature to direct, and hopefully something I'll get into this year that'll be a more up-tempo, contemporary, contained thriller, but hopefully with the same creative design that went into Daughter.
Well, Corey, thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on the film.
All right, thanks so much.